Hey everybody, a couple quick notes before starting today's episode. First off, I snagged another review on iTunes. This one is by somebody who goes by the name Lol It's Jesus, and it's titled Conversational and Real. Lol It's Jesus says, "Loving this podcast so far. The host allows his guests space to weave their drug experiences seamlessly into personal life stories." Thanks, Lol It's Jesus. The next and final thing I want to mention before starting this episode is that all of the music you're about to hear is done by the subject of this episode. He goes by the name of Aggracyst. So if you enjoy his music, definitely find him on places like SoundCloud. With that out of the way, I hope you enjoy today's episode. If you like what you hear, be sure to leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, if you have a story you want to share, shoot me an email at psychotropicpodcast@hotmail.com. On your Skype profile, it looks like I see a microphone and then I see a pop filter. What's that about?
I make music. I've been rapping and making beats since like 97, 98.
Why don't you describe yourself?
Bipolar suicide, third eye with open mind, red-eyed poster child, schizophrenic medic five, overweight cheeseburger caper with the bacon top.
Oh man, I don't know. I'm an introvert that like lives for just being creative, and I struggle to find the time and the energy to be creative. And this has just kind of been like a theme throughout my life for the most part. I don't know, like, I'm just a normal cat, I guess. I've struggled my whole life with depression and anxiety, and I don't know, I guess I've kind of always been, I've done like years and years of like meds that doctors have prescribed me to make me feel better, and I've always thought that like there's got to be something like easier than that, like meds aren't an answer, I don't feel like, and finding ways to escape shit that I feel that I don't want to feel for a long time, man.
Brainwave, mental pen and paper slave, scription hawking, pill popping, catching you on later date, broken-hearted, cold-hearted, snake in the lion's den, venom drip from fangs.
Psychotropic presents Aggy.
Tango with the devil breed, dig deep, arm hook, cast away on yellow beak, dirty grubby fat fingers grasping you and shaking ya, deep breath breathing, chest heaving from the mania, salt in the wounds, blue lagoon, monster shark attack, spread eagle soul wings, coasted in the bargain rack.
And you used drugs to facilitate that?
I mean, yeah, I guess it's how it started. The first thing I ever tried was drinking, and it wasn't that big of a deal until I got into high school. I started smoking pot when I was like 13, so the transition between like 8th grade and 9th grade, middle school and high school. And I was trying to like feel something different than like depression and wanting to kill myself. So I did. I found an escape, and what really pleased me was smoking weed at first. I wasn't all about drinking. Drinking was kind of just like an out of control party thing we did. Oh yeah, let's get together, and we drink too much and we get sloshed and shit faced and don't remember how we got home that night. But that was never my thing. I'm not a drinker. To this day, I'm not a drinker. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm having a like quality time when I'm drunk. But like, man, sometimes I'm at the top of my game if I'm high, especially when being creative.
Take a stance with my battle axe. Got something for them battle cats on battle threads who babble blab like a snake that rattles threat.
So what was it about marijuana that allowed you to, I guess, escape?
I mean, at first it was just fun. At first marijuana was just like fun and being giggly and doing stupid shit, playing video games. And it turned into like, as I got older, it turned into like I almost equate it to like I'm a cigarette, well, on and off cigarette smoker for 25 years now. I almost equate it to that relief you get when like you're fiending for a cigarette, but it's a different kind of like. I just feel like I think clear. My anxiety level decreases. Like if I'm depressed, my depression decreases, or I'm not focused on it. And then, you know, we just went recreational here in my state, and I've had my medical card for 10 years now. And like, I had a doctor who put me on opiates for some chronic pain I was having. And part of what helped me get away from using opiates so much at one point was like, I knew I needed to trade it for something, and the marijuana was actually working better for me to manage pain than like the opiates were at one point. So, there's just so many benefits for me to smoking pot. It's hard to say bad things about it.
But I never rocked a nice grill cause my smile is too pretty. I want to throw a glamorous fit with tequila and quaaludes and heroin pricks and get a slap.
When did you start using opiates? Can you describe? You said that you suffered from there was some sort of pain or some sort of accident or something.
I was living in Georgia for a few years, and I messed my knee up pretty bad, and I didn't have insurance, and you know what? This was actually after my knee. I had kidney stones in Georgia, and I came back from the hospital and was telling my neighbor downstairs about the kidney stones, and they had given me a couple Roxys to take home with me while I passed this stone. It wasn't a very big one. And my neighbor, when I was talking to her about it, she was like, "Oh yeah, I got this bottle of Vicodin that I'm not taking. If you need them, here." And she just gave me the bottle of Vicodin. And that was the first time I ever had like an excess of opiates to kind of like, I guess, experiment with or play with and enjoy. Because like the stone passed. I wasn't in pain anymore. I didn't need them, but I knew the couple of Roxys they gave me to get through that at the hospital. Like I knew I liked that buzz. And when she was like, "Here's a bottle of like 90 Vicodin that I don't use," my eyes lit up like the moon at night, man. It was beautiful.
I've been Oxycontin dripping for the past 3 weeks. Dingsworth went for help and he left me this beat. And when I woke up this morning, I was stuck in the mattress. And the only thing I could reach was this pen and this pad.
What was it about the buzz that you liked?
I always say when people we talk about it, like there's something about like 15 minutes after you pop that pill or that couple of pills, that 15 minutes goes by and you just feel like this warm buzz come over your body, and I almost like a halo on my head, and I would get a little tingly and a little itchy and a little chatty, and it was like the perfect antidepressant. All these drugs that these doctors have been giving me for 20, 25 years, telling me I needed to take them so I could stay alive and feel better, they weren't really making me feel better. They were just making me not want to like kill myself all the time. But like the opiates, man, a couple of Vicodin, oh man, that's what I was looking for.
The first free seat and pack the orange plastic case. Childproof was cat, the Rite Aid pharmacist. Aggracyst might peel his shit back.
See, and my thing was, like, even with pot, like, I felt like pot was something, like, I could do before school, you know, in high school, going to school. And, like, the only thing I really had to worry about was, like, airing out real good before I walked in the building. And then they had to decide if it was me or one of the 12 other potheads in the classroom that smelled like dope. So, like, that it was almost like a safety feature for me with the pot. And the opiates was the same thing, but that buzz for me, got real extreme real quick. Like I got real addicted to it and wanted the most of it and more of it whenever I could get it.
I'm only half listening. Got that buzz back in my head that moves like Sonic. And I'm pacing my apartment like a death row convict. Trapped in a 50 milligram clown pit.
How did it look before really kind of getting into opiates, and then how did it look once you were in their hold?
You know, at first, it started off slow. Like I would go like, yeah, I'm just gonna do a couple on the weekend, take a couple on a Friday, a couple on a Saturday, and then 2 days turned into 3 days, and then 3 days turned into 4 days. And you know, before I had been doing that, I was just a pothead, and I was just making music and going to work, and none of that really changed accept my fuel for more opiates. Like, that 2 days in a row turned to 3 days in a row, turned to 4 days in a row. And then after 4 days in a row, if you try to stop for a day, well, you don't really feel right and you don't really feel good. And hey, if I just take a couple, that feeling will go away. And the next thing I knew, I was taking 7, 8 in the morning. I'd come home from work and pop 7, 8 more. And it even got more out of control than that. So, and it happened quick, and it became like I was neglecting things. It wasn't things that I wanted to do because I wasn't spending a lot of time looking for pills, especially when it started, but like I was neglecting monetary responsibilities. Like I would put off a bill for a month because I needed $150 to snag pills for the week. I had a doctor that I did have legit knee pain, but I was milking it. And I had a doctor that he was giving me 90, 10, 325s a month. And I would go through those. I'd be lucky if they'd last me 2 weeks. And then I'd be fishing for pills the next 2 weeks until I could get my script filled again.
How would you go about finding the pills after that 2 weeks?
When I came back from Georgia, I wasn't really addicted to opiates at that point. But when I came back, the cats that I was hanging with before I moved, I started hanging out with them again. And that it kind of became the thing. Everyone was popping pills. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know that buzz. I like that buzz. Let's do this. And that's when it really got out of hand. I was in a circle of people who were popping pills all the time. So it was always easy to find pills. You'd have to do a little driving around or driving to a shady spot. But there were always pills until over like the last couple of years, there were always pills. And I came back here and started really taking pills a lot in 2006. And this was just 2 years ago I got over this addiction. So it was to the point at one point where like I was taking so many pills, like I wasn't catching that buzz anymore. The last 5-6 years I was on them, I wasn't catching the buzz. I was just taking pills so I wasn't getting sick. Like I needed pills so I could go to work and not be sick all day. I wasn't doing it to catch a buzz. I can't remember the last time I had a buzz off an opiate.
What is the sickness like?
It's the first time I got sick, I thought I had the flu. I stayed home from work for 3 days. It was like cold sweats, aches. Like little twitches. Like I got a little bit of tardive dyskinesia from like the psych meds I've taken my whole life, but like that would just kick this shit into overgear. Just like my stomach, that was the big thing. Like my stomach was always so messed up if I wasn't taking the pills. So I would take the pills just so my stomach didn't feel so bad that I could actually go to work and do the shit I had to do. And yeah, the chills and just like, it was bad, man. I can't imagine what heroin addicts go through. It's got to be way worse than that, right? I went to my doctor to get help, but they put me on Suboxones. I did Suboxone strips for about 9 months. Weaned myself off those, was off for about a month and a half before I was like, hey, I wonder if, now that I've been off pills for this long, I wonder if I take a few, if I'll get that buzz. And I'd get that buzz for like 1 day and I'd get excited. And then I'd try taking pills again the next day and no buzz. Back to feeling sick too, because I'm not taking them. Like I'd do a string of days and just be sick, and then I'm back in the rigmarole of taking pills not to feel ill.
How did hallucinogens play into this?
What
is your relationship to them?
I got a million light year long light trail behind me. You find
my relationship with hallucinogens was through like my 20s. I had done a few small dose like mushroom trips. Like we'd get a quarter and 4 or 5 of us would eat some stems and caps, and we'd walk around looking at the clouds, and it was cool. And in high school, I did a lot of LSD. LSD was very plentiful at that time, 93, 94. We were getting 10 by 10s for $100. We'd all go in 25. We'd have 25. Four of us would have 25, tabs each. And literally all of us would be out of tabs within like 2-3 weeks. So like at least 25 hits a month for a year. My senior year, I can't remember not tripping at something. We did a lot of LSD, but I was doing LSD the wrong way back then. Like my last 4 or 5 LSD trips were bad trips, and I'd take the shit, I'd start tripping, and I'd be like, dude, why did I do that? Why am I doing this? Why do I keep torturing myself with these bad trips? Because it was just mental, a lot of mental shit. LSD will really fuck with you, especially if you're taking it a lot.
Well, how can you explain that evolution? You started taking it, and it was probably fun. You were having a good time, and then slowly it started to turn into bad trips.
Yeah, it was the first, 10, 15 times we did it. It was fun and giggles and laughing and just doing stupid shit. And then like it started to turn into, and it was weird. It was a dynamic in the group of people I was hanging with, but it started to turn into this weird like paranoia, and you were paranoid of all the people you were around. And we'd get through a session like that, and 3 or 4 days later, hey, let's trip again, and we trip again, and it would just be like paranoia. And I remember, so an interesting fact about me, I'm gay, and I was not out at the time. In fact, I was paranoid of being outed. And a little thing when you're tripping and you're gay, and you don't want your friends to know, and you're paranoid of them finding out, and you're tripping, and your friends are like just laughing and giggling and tripping, but they're saying faggot and that's fucking gay. That'll fuck with your trip, man. That'll really fuck with your trip. And I was putting myself in that position often for a couple of months before I was like, I'm done with the LSD.
How do you think they would have found out?
Not that I thought they were going to find out. I was just scared they were going to find out. Like, scared of maybe saying something that sounded feminine, or like just so many things run through your head, especially when you're tripping, like anything. Look at the way I'm sitting. Shit, man, they might think I'm gay. Like I would get in my head like that on trips, and it would send me off the edge.
Jesus. I could imagine like you being in a situation where you're worried, like, oh my God, if I look at them in a certain way, then they're just going to see, they're just going to know.
Yeah.
And
well, when I say the paranoid stuff, like we had conversations about it and fights. Like, I know what I'm thinking. You know what I'm thinking. Have you ever tried to play spades or euchre with a group of people on LSD? That will really mess with someone's head, especially when you got cats in your crew who are like known for messing around and stacking the deck or doing shit like that, eye signals. And I remember one night coming home from a trip after trying to play euchre with my friends, and I got home and I laid down in bed, and every time I closed my eyes, the ace and jack of spades would just fucking appear behind my eyes and zoom through my like behind eye vision or whatever. Yeah, man, the chirping is weird. Like, I'm scared. I haven't gone back to LSD. I have friends that still mess with it, but I haven't tried that again. I've tried microdosing. I did some microdosing LSD, and it actually was too reminiscent of my trips, and I stopped microdosing LSD because of it.
So you graduated to something more like, you said mushrooms, DMT.
Yeah, well, we had done. I had done a few like real mild mushroom trips, and then I got into a little like hip hop crew with some cats around here, and one of the dudes was slinging pressies, and like good pressies, like end of the 90s pressies, the benzos and the white doves and the Pikachus, and like we had all the good shits, double stacks, triple stacks. I don't even know if that shit was real, but we paid for it, and they were good rolls, and I loved rolling, man. Oh my God, that was my favorite thing. we kind of had like, we would plan it out, man. We'd run to the store beforehand. Everyone would get special socks for the night. We would buy, passies and stuff like that, get our blow pops. And then we'd buy we used to find these things of soap at the dollar store. And if you ran the soap like long enough, there was a little plastic figurine in the middle, and you had to get to the middle to find out what it was. And we'd all stand around sinks with the hot water and getting these little plastic things out. We'd do push people through the floor. We had this trick we did, pushing people through the floor or dropping people through the floor. We'd do magic carpet rides, lots of hugs. I remember the first time I rolled, we were at a little amusement park in town, and I got on the pirate ship. And I'd never rolled before, and I kept screaming, "I'm rolling my balls off!" And I was having the time of my life. I was having so much fun. And this girl next to me, she was like scared. She looked at me. She's like, "You're not going to throw up on me, are you?" And I was like, "No, there's no way I'm puking." So it was just about like hanging with friends and bonding. And that's what we did, minus the couple of times we went out and raved, but made a lot of music rolling too, a lot of funny music. But
it sounds super playful, is how it sounded.
Yeah, that's how we did it. And we had a strong group of like 20 in our crew, and we would, we'd end up at someone's place, and it was just like a love fest, and not like in a sexual way or anything. A lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, you do ecstasy, you have orgies." No, that's not what it's about. Like we fucking made bonds with each other, and I still have bonds with these people to this day. And that was, like I said, 97 to 99 we were doing that.
Had me a girlfriend I swore I loved to death, and I didn't think that she would be the one to steal my last breath. But then I caught wind, she was fucking my best friend. Rifle barrel in my mouth, I swore I'd never leave that basement. Couldn't pull the trigger though, guess I'm just a pussy. Let the doctors crack my dome, sit me down and have a look-see.
So going back to the opiate addiction, you mentioned in the email that MDMA helped you through that, right? But then also just now, like probably 20 minutes ago or so, or earlier on, you had mentioned that you had mushroom trips or psychedelic trips that also helped you not.
They really confirmed my my elimination of opiates in my life. We'll put it that way. So like I was doing opiates for like a long fucking time, just in that cycle. And about 2 years ago, when my boyfriend moved here, we do a big like music festival in town every year. It's like a weekend long thing. And we had been planning on it for like 6 months. I had a pocket full of pills, and he took, between we got there at 11 p.m., we left at 12 p.m. the next day. So we were there for like 13 hours at this party. And throughout the night, he took 4 pills, I think. And we had 12 when we started, and I gave one away and I took the rest. And I gave myself serotonin syndrome. I thought I was dying, bro.
What does that feel like?
About 3 hours left in the night, I knew I had just gone too far, and I wasn't like having fun anymore. I was kind of miserable. I was sweating a lot. I was real tense, a lot of anxiety. I was twitching, like, oh my God, the twitching. I couldn't control it. Like my arm just fucking cutting across my body to the other side, and I couldn't control it. And we walked out, and the worst feeling was walking out of this party into the bright, warm sunlight at 12 in the afternoon, and I was just shaking, and I felt like shit. And we got an Uber and got back to the house, and I laid down in bed, and it was weird. Like I've never like had like weird, like, I don't want to call it a hallucination, but like I've got caught in repetitive thoughts, on trips before and stuff like that, but it never happened on pills, on ecstasy or MDMA even. And I laid in bed for the next like 3 days. Well, okay, so for like 3 hours before I actually closed my eyes a little bit and fell asleep, I just had this repetitive thought. You're doing the wrong drugs, and you're doing them the wrong way. You're doing the wrong drugs, and you're doing them the wrong way. And like, it was a repetitive thought in my head for like 3 hours while I'm sitting there sweating, cold, shaking, like total serotonin syndrome. I didn't get out of bed for like 3 days, and I had been doing opiates still up until that point. And when I finally was feeling good enough to get out of bed to like go sit on the couch and like try to eat something, I was like, dude, all the like terrible like withdrawals I've gone through with opiates, like that serotonin syndrome shit is no joke. Like I didn't think I was going to survive that. And I said, if I just got through this and I know I'm going to get through this, I don't have to fuck with opiates. And I had been sick for like 3 days. I hadn't gotten out of bed. So I hadn't taken an opiate. So I think like maybe half of my serotonin sickness and not feeling good was also like withdrawing from the opiates. And I had a few more days off before I had to go back to work. And I went back to work and started like super microdosing Suboxone strips. I would get an 8 milligram strip, and I would use an 8 milligram strip, and it would last me. I made it last me like almost 2 months. I was just taking little pieces off it when I needed it, and in that time, I found DMT, and I found a really good like mushroom hookup, and I started messing with microdosing mushrooms and doing like 3 gram trips. And the more I microdosed with the mushrooms and did the 3 gram trips, the more I was like really confident in the fact that like I wasn't going to put a fucking Vicodin or a Percocet or a Norco in my mouth again.
Why is that? Why was there confidence that was born from that?
I kept, it's weird. The first time I kind of went hard by myself on the mushrooms, I bumped it from like, I was doing like 2 grams, and I said, okay, I got this 3 gram chocolate. I'm just going to like take the whole thing. And I did it. And, it was a little bit more than what I had remembered mushrooms to be like. I got that giggly feeling. It was actually funny. I started laughing my ass off by myself at one point. My plan was to pack a backpack, get the dog, call an Uber, go to the park and hang out at the park for a couple hours, call an Uber and go back home. Well, I start packing my backpack and I'm like, what do I need to bring? And my buddies tell me, don't forget your magic hoodie and maybe bring a blanket, treats for the dog. I'm like, oh, I need treats for myself. And I reached in the refrigerator and I pulled out an orange and I went, I can't eat this. It's a color. And I just started fucking laughing. And it was the best laugh. Bro, I'm almost in tears right now talking about it. It was the most healing laugh I had had in years. I actually stood there and I made a video. It was kind of funny. I was like, how can you go on a trip if you can't pack a backpack? Because I had totally given up on packing my backpack. And after that, I had a good time with myself. I hung out with the dog. I laughed and I felt so good after that. But during that time where I was by myself, I had a moment that I focused on where I realized this is the right drug if I'm going to do drugs. And this is kind of how to do it. Like, I'm still experimenting with how to do it, but I know that it's one of the right drugs. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of like this prophetic moment I had because I remembered I'd been focusing on that moment I had when I had the serotonin syndrome, telling myself you're doing the wrong drugs and you're doing them the wrong way. And like I had this moment on shrooms that day where I was like, dude, this is the right drug. And it was the right drug because I felt good doing it. I felt good doing after I had done it after the fact. But like I felt like it was healing me instead of destroying me inside. That's why I knew, or why I feel it's one of the right drugs.
And so you came away from that experience and you felt by this time you hadn't done opiates for how long again?
Maybe 3 months or so.
And so you still use mushrooms in a microdosing fashion still, or?
Yeah, I was making a powder and doing just a tiny little bit. I have a little spoon that I was using. I mean, to the point where like it was almost like homeopathy. I felt like it didn't really doing anything at all, but I was doing it anyways. I tried doing it with LSD and LSD wasn't working. It was LSD was working in a different way, and it wasn't as fulfilling to me. It was making me like things were like they had sharper edges, like colors were a little bit less dull. I don't want to say brighter, but I'll say like less dull. But like when I was microdosing the mushrooms, I felt better. Like, not my perception of things, but like me, I felt better. LSD was like, maybe I want to say like microdosing, it was amplifying my senses or doing something to my senses that wasn't the norm. Hearing, smelling, tasting even, touch. Microdosing the mushrooms, it made me feel like I was eating, you know, a salad for lunch instead of McDonald's. Like, it made me feel like I was doing something good for myself internally, like in my head, mentally, for my stability and for my mental health. Instead of doing something that was making me feel like bad about what I was doing. Like when I was taking opiates, I felt bad I wasn't happy doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like I was doing it so I wasn't getting sick, and it wasn't something I enjoyed or I was proud of.
Yeah.
Or that I bragged to people about. But like I'll tell people all day about like my mushroom trips. I love talking about that because I come out of them and I feel like I've learned something. I feel like I look at shit differently, and not just differently, but in a different way that makes me a better person when I'm looking at the shit I'm looking at. Bro, I haven't taken one of my fucking my psych meds in 6 months either. Yeah, that's really the big win for me.
Boom, buddy, beat it. Boom, buddy, beat it.
Can you describe a mushroom trip that was profound for you, or something, just a memorable mushroom trip?
How long do you think it takes to get famous? For a musician? Or a painter? Whatever, famous. 4 years?
My last, I mean, you know, I read a lot of McKenna, and I listened to a lot of his lectures, and I kept hearing him say, yeah, you know, 3-4 grams of mushrooms is one thing, but 7 grams of mushrooms, 8 grams of mushrooms, you start getting up there and different things start happening. And I was like, what do you mean different things? Like, I was so curious about what different things were because I had only experienced so much. So this was just before Thanksgiving, the weekend before Thanksgiving this year. I did 7 grams. They were chocolates. I've heard rumors about like mixing shrooms with chocolates and how it can offer a different effect or it processes differently, something about alkalites or something like that. I don't know for sure. But I did 7 grams and I did the first 3.5 and I said, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, no, I want to do this. Like I had actually posted on Facebook before I did it. I said, I'm looking for ego death. Like I'm looking for an ego death. I want my ego to die today. And I said, yeah, this is what you want to do. This is what you want. So fucking do it. So I ate the rest of the chocolate. And one of the last times I had a trip before that, like I had a good time and it was one of those giggly fun trips. And this one started to kick in, like I started feeling it coming on, and I was expecting that giggly feeling, kind of anticipating it, and I was watching TV, and at one point I went, and that was it, bro. I didn't giggle again for a couple of hours, and it got scary. It got real scary real quick. I was walking around my house just kind of pacing, like anxious and like kind of regretting what I had done and not knowing what I got myself into. And I started seeing, it was weird. There were like Scrabble tiles, but I was seeing them like laid out on the wall, laid out on our mini blinds. The pixels, I felt like all the pixels in the TV were like little Scrabble tiles. and they were like spreading off the TV screen. And I at one point had to turn off like the TV because I couldn't focus. I said, I'm going to try music. I turned on music. I couldn't focus on that. Every time I closed my eyes, it was just getting like way out of control. And I kept seeing, it's funny, my buddy I was talking to makes fun of me. I kept seeing these Scrabble tiles in the mini blinds, and they started popping up with like weird scripture I'd never seen before. Like I can only describe it as like alien text. Like letter, if a spaceship landed here and it had a language on the side of it that we didn't understand or never seen before, this is what it was. But like two words that I recognized kept popping up. One was love, Love. The other one was berry. I don't know why. Berry, like blueberry or strawberry.
Yeah.
And I was like focusing on that, and I was kind of tripping out on it, but it was just getting more and more intense. And I just wanted to close my eyes. And every time I closed my eyes, I got real scared, like wanting to cry, real scared. And I have a really good trip friend who's on the other side of the country. And I called him and put him on speakerphone. And I was like, bro, I don't know what's going on, but every time I like close my eyes, I start to freak out. I go, and I just want to cry. And he tried to kind of help me through it for a minute. And then he was like, no, bro. He's like, do it. If you got to cry, cry. And I had that flashback of like that good laugh I have. And I started thinking maybe it's time for like a good fucking cry. And I got off the phone with him and I pulled my blanket up over me like in a cocoon on the couch. And I closed my eyes and I sobbed. Just softly sobbed for like half an hour. But while I was sobbing, I kept going, it feels so good to cry. And all the fear I was having, like all that anxiety and fear I was having, like as the tears were like dripping down my face, like that anxiety was like leaving, and I was starting to feel better about my trip. And I like the more I cried, I felt better. And I got to a point where I was like, I gotta move scenes. I gotta change scenes. I wanted to be in my bed. So I crawled into my bed and I pulled my blankets up over me, and it just got fucking out of control. Every time I closed my eyes, it was like this digital fucking landscape, and it was completely silent in the house. But I call it sound driving, where I make noises or I hum or whatever the fuck I'm doing at the time. But it drives what's going on when I close my eyes. All the things that I'm seeing, all the digital landscapes and waves, they're all moving and changing color and direction with the sounds that I'm making. And I got really into that. And I actually got lost in that for about 3 hours. I was lost sense of time, lost sense of self, and I was just making noise. And I kept noticing that I was either saying or thinking, this is what you wanted, and it's beautiful. I kept going, this is what you wanted, and it's beautiful. I feel so connected. I never felt so connected in my life, and I didn't know what the fuck I was connected to. But I felt it, and I was driving it with the sounds I was making. If my partner had walked in on me at that moment, he probably would have freaked out and called an ambulance, because I was like a lunatic in the fetal position under a comforter in the bed, making weird noises and saying weird shit.
What was the come down like?
It was weird. Like I just slowly came out of it. I started making softer noises and less noises. I was writhing at one point back and forth. And I started to realize that like, yo, you're okay. You're here still. You're like, you know where you are now. You're in your bed. I'd peek out and look like at the wall every once in a while. I had a blue light on in the bedroom. I'd look at that and no, you're still tripping. There's still shit going on with your eyes. But like my sense of self was back. There was a good period there where like my sense of self was, it wasn't like, there was no sense of self. Like I was a noise in a a field it was almost like a big like equalizer, like a 500 band equalizer I was controlling with my sounds, but they weren't just going up and down, those little colored dots. Mm-hmm. They weren't just going up and down, they're going in all different directions. And then like my partner came home and like I had a real like delicate moment with him where I said, I hugged him and I said like I feel like I don't show you how much I appreciate you. Like I had such an appreciation for everything at that point, but especially my partner when he got home. And I think part of that was like, while I was tripping, I was kind of in the back of my head. I kind of hope like Buddy comes home because I'm a little scared. Like I wanted someone to be with me at one point, and then like finally he came home and I was like, oh my God, finally another person. But yeah, that was intense.
Look at me. I'm a fucking freak show. Everybody stare as I walk and make the streets glow. Trying to figure out why I'm surrounded by these people. Trying to figure out why I'm resonating evil. Look at me.
This episode was produced by me, Philip Johnson. All music featured can be found in the description section of this episode. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe. Also, leave a review. Let me know what you think. Be sure to follow Psychotropic on Instagram at Psychotropic Podcast, all one word. If you're interested in becoming a supporter, you can do that by going to psychotropic.podbean.com. Just click on the Become a Patron button in the upper right-hand corner. Lastly, if you have a story that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. Shoot me an email at psychotropicpodcast@hotmail.com. Thanks again, everybody. See you next time.
Look at me. I'm a fucking freak show. Everybody stare as I walk and make the streets glow. Trying to figure out why I'm surrounded by these people. Trying to figure out why I'm resonating evil. Look at me. As my body drags my weak soul. Everybody gather round so we can get the seat. So freak show. Let your kids point and laugh, but I'll be damned if I ever let these bastards make an ass. Now if you'll turn your attention to the left behind the curtain. If you've seen our show before, you've seen this one, I'm certain. The smell is atrocious, but he makes the smell on purpose. Protection and disperses it whenever he gets nervous. Yes, isn't he a fine specimen? This is how the first freak looks after a sedative. Okay, I can't fool you, this is the first freak. But now that he's sedated, we can take a closer peek. Don't be fooled by the appearance of his dreary eyes. The brain that's inside is very much alive. See, it never goes to sleep, and when pressure is applied to the front of his head, you can hear him growl inside. Stare long enough at all the doctor's sheets and compare the statistics to a normal human being. And apply just a little bit of logic, you will see that it's obvious this monster is a modern day freak. Look at me. I'm a fucking freak show. Everybody stare as I walk and make the streets glow. Trying to figure out why I'm surrounded by these people. Trying to figure out why I'm resonating evil. Look at me. As my body drags my weak soul. Everybody gather around so we can get the seats. So freak show. Let your kids point and laugh, but I'll be damned if I ever let these bastards make an ass of me. Come one, come all, gather round the center stage. Ladies and gentlemen, children of every age. Yes, this is the same case after sedatives wear away. For the safety of the public, he's been locked in this cage. 4-point restraints, and it's obvious he's sick. Will we shock him with